Hello and welcome to today's Movers and Shakers virtual event. My name is Simon Montgomery and I am the Regional Director for Movers and Shakers. For those of you who are new to Movers and Shakers, a very warm welcome. We are the leading property networking forum in the UK. This is our 25th year of delivering events, bringing together key players from both the public and private sectors. Onto this lunchtime session, the changing development agenda for the Northwest. As we all know, the global property market has experienced huge disruption, which everyone is working hard to respond to. The Northwest is not alone in facing this challenge. How these impacts have been felt and how the region's development market responds and reboots is at the heart of today's discussion. And to talk about all things development, we have assembled a fabulous panel. Today's session will be chaired by Lisa Tai, who's a partner at Shoesmiths. Louise Wyman is the Strategic Director of Growth and Development at Manchester City Council. Graham Scott is the Executive Director and Development of Trafford Housing Trust, and Phil Mayle is the Regional Director for the Northwest for News Developments. In cooperation with today's panel, Louise has very kindly agreed to do a keynote on the rebooting of the Manchester economy. A very warm welcome and thank you to our sponsors today, who are Shoesmith Solicitors, one of the largest real estate practices in the UK, as well as award-winning Northwest team based in Manchester. Shoesmiths regularly works with many leading national, international and regional developers, investors, funders, corporates and public organisations on exciting transformational projects across the Northwest region, giving them an excellent understanding of what it takes to deliver successful developments. Today's session, as I mentioned earlier, is chaired by Lisa, who is the Joint Head of Shoesmiths Planning and is also based in Manchester. And in combination with a panel, I'm sure Lisa's background gives us a very good formula to have a fabulous discussion this lunchtime. But before we go on to the panel session, as I mentioned earlier, we have a keynote from Louise. So without further ado, I would like to hand you over to Louise. Louise, if you're there, I shall very ably pass you over to Louise. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Simon. Okay. Thank you very much for that welcome. And it's fantastic to join this event, to be with you all at lunchtime. And I'm delighted to share some of the work that we've been doing over the summer months to, as Simon has said, get Manchester fit and ready for the challenges and the changes ahead. So I wanted to start with an image there of our city centre. It's an amazing civic centre, as you know. You're looking at my office, which is the Town Hall extension in the middle of the image there. Our amazing kind of civic offer in terms of the public library, left of the screen, the old Town Hall in the background. And again, a city I hope you can see here that has evolved, responded to many previous crises, is well versed in reinvention, I would say, in innovation. And those are some of the principles that are absolutely underpinning our recovery. So I'm going to give you a preview for the next sort of 6 or 7 minutes of some work we have been doing, and this will be formally launched by our leader, Sir Richard Leese, next Wednesday, and the business community. And we're very keen that the business community adopt our recovery plan, work in partnership with the City Council to deliver the ambitions and to really pull through what has been an enormously challenging time. So I've got Shaliz in the background moving on the slides. So let's go to the next slide. Shaliz, and again, just to reiterate, 3 decades of growth, Manchester is a trusted partner in terms of delivering both national ambitions of government and our regional growth agenda. Some milestones there: post-industrial decline, a city that responded, recognised the changes. The tragedy of the Arndale bomb was then addressed through a very visionary master plan for the city, much of which has been built out. How we responded to our bid for and secured the Commonwealth Games in '02 has led to large-scale regeneration to the east of the city. We work in partnerships. That's at the core of how we like to operate as a city council. And we're very proud that we have led the way nationally on devolution. And that will really be of great value in terms of how we work across GM and across the system, both public and private, in the years ahead. Let's move on. I'll rattle through these slides and we'll share the slides at the end. So anyone who wants to take away detail, these slides are for you as well. Just to sort of put the spotlight on some of that innovation, Health Innovation Manchester is really a dynamic partnership There's loads that we're doing around transport with GM. Metrolink was a sort of forerunner of that. Graphene, I sit now on the National Graphene Institute, and it's phenomenal, the innovation that's both been developed and projected worldwide from Manchester. And the SHARP project, something the council is really proud of, promotes digital innovation. So you can see along both the Oxford Road corridor and kind of growing out of the city centre, a lot of growth and innovation. Let's move on to the next slide. So what we've done, once you're faced with a global pandemic, you really do have to sort of take stock. I know we'll all have looked at our businesses and our institutions differently, but we went back to our Manchester strategy, which has the pillars of people, place, and prosperity. And we've done a refresh of that and embedded those principles in our economic recovery plan too. There's a lot of emphasis in our plan on inclusive growth, on the foundational economy, and the net zero carbon ambitions we have as a city. We intend to be net zero carbon by 2038. Next slide, please. Lots of changes out there. You'll all recognise these, but there's a lot of geopolitical uncertainty. We've all perhaps forgotten a little bit about Brexit until relatively recently, but that is coming at us at a pace now. So how we'll trade with the EU is going to be a new set of relationships. It will impact in our sector in construction and development around supply chains, lots of challenge in the background. So we feel a real responsibility as a city council to provide stability and provide as much kind of clarity as we can for our partners in a changing climate. Next slide, please. And we've done the sort of bit of homework that you do of some SWOT analysis around opportunities and threats. It's been a really tough time in the top left corner there for the threat to our high street, for our retailers. Our cultural institutions have found this particularly hard as they haven't been able to operate how they normally would. Yet in every cloud there can be a silver lining, and we have seen, if you move towards the opportunity slide of that slide, then the digital skills have really increased during this time. Our health innovation, our tech sector has started to flourish. We've seen 4,000 new tech businesses relocate in the city during lockdown, which I think is astonishing. And we've now overtaken Cambridge as the most important centre for digital businesses in the UK after London. And there's lots of work to the bottom right of the slide that we see as a city council that we can do to help create job opportunities for the youth, for the highly skilled workforce that we have coming out of our university system. We're seeing a lot of north shoring, companies moving out of the expensive kind of regions to the southeast into Manchester. And we're doing a big programme of work to develop our public realm so that the city is inviting, is healthy, and provides great outdoor space for gathering at this time. Next slide, please. Some figures for you, for those of you who like numbers, just to put some stats against the growth that we've experienced since 2014, all that job generation, lots of housing delivery. I'm really proud of the fact that we've delivered over 13,000 homes across the city in the past 5 years. That's more than any London borough, and we're often told that the housing challenge is in the southeast, but we're delivering supply here in the northwest. And I know that will be a topic of conversation as we go through questions. So some facts and figures for you there, but let's move on to the next slide. So our role as a city council is all around building confidence, nurturing those businesses in the city, creating opportunities for our diverse communities, keeping stability so that residential commercial development can continue. We've operated our planning system through lockdown 1 and now lockdown 2, and that's happened virtually and in a hybrid format. There's lots we can do with our growth companies, our NHS trusts, and our partners across various sectors. Next slide. So just to give you a feel for these, the last few slides now, how we're going to focus our growth and where we want to partner, absolutely around green growth. You'll have heard the announcements this week on the green industrial revolution. That is something we take seriously in the Northwest. We'll want to own and drive. We will return to the city. Cities aren't a thing of the past. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And it's really optimistic, the news around the vaccines. And there's a spirit of optimism now that we will be able to return to the city in a careful and safe way, certainly from the early part of next year onwards. We'll build on our strengths around tech, around digital, around life sciences, innovation, advanced materials. We absolutely believe in the power of partnerships, and that's why we're happy to be part of this community today, and we are a trusted delivery partner, both Manchester itself and the city region. Next slide, please. I'm just going to go through these very quickly now because there's some agendas here around people. So how we'll work with our labour market, how we'll create opportunities for graduates, and also support the apprenticeship and the Kickstart programme, which is now being rolled out. So we see jobs as a key driver of that next phase of growth. So as a City Council, we'll do all we can to partner with people who can help us generate opportunities for people across the city too. Next slide, please. And you can take away the detail on the specific programmes at the bottom of the slides. Big place transformation. I'm really proud that construction has continued at pretty much pre-COVID levels. I'll let others comment on their particular role in that, but it's really heartening to see the activity happening across the city. And we're using this time to pedestrianise streets, to create great public realm, to increase our movement offer in terms of cycle routes, walking routes, opening up our canal paths and so on. A lot we're doing with GM there on active travel. Next slide, please. And prosperity is absolutely what we're here to deliver. Some symbols there and some examples of places that are helping us drive innovations such as ID Manchester. Lots we can do with our grassroots organisations as well. This isn't all about big business. This is about bringing those creative industries together with business opportunities, creating capacity around music, around television, around digital content. So I think that the creative sector is really strong in the city, and we see that as a great part of the foundational economy as well. And digital is going to be huge. We've all learned that, if nothing else, through this year of lockdowns and of responding to COVID. I think we've got a final slide or two coming up, and then I will hand back. So 4 kind of core messages that I wanted you to take away. Innovation at the heart of how we will work, and we would love to partner in that space. The city centre, the public realm and the urban realm is something that we will own and drive, again, with partners, make it greener, make it more inviting. A healthy placemaking is a big part of the agenda I want to develop. Zero carbon housing retrofit, we see a massive agenda there. Will be a big part of how we contribute to bringing our carbon emissions down. And I think there's a huge amount that the housing sector and partners can do in that space. And then North Manchester is really going to be a zone of transformation, I would say, around the investment that's going into the General Hospital, the investment that's going into the Northern Gateway sites. If you add those 2 projects together, that's over £2 billion worth of investment in the north of the city. So if you were to ask me, where's the next big growth area, then it will be around North Manchester. And we're looking forward to making some really strong announcements about that too. And I now think we're probably heading to the last slide or 2. There we go. That's again bringing you back to that image of the city centre. Not quite so many lights on at the moment, but those lights will come back on, and we're doing everything we can to ensure a safe and healthy return to the city. So with that said, I will hand you across to Lisa, our chair.
Thanks, Louise. I think that was really interesting and really exciting from the point of view of Manchester does look very different at the moment when you come into the city, and I think for me that's given me some hope that the council has our back in terms of us returning to some kind of normal in the future. I think that's my first question for you really is about the future of cities, and I think I mean city in the widest sense and not just the city centre, because obviously you've talked about North Manchester and other areas for potential growth. There's been a lot of talk about, do cities really have a future in the post-COVID world? And I just wondered what your thoughts were on what that city will look like. I think your answer will be that the cities do have a future, but what do you think that will look like, and how will it be different, do you think, in the post-COVID world?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that, and it's always difficult to crystal ball gaze, isn't it? But I will bring some of the thinking that we've been doing with partners. I'm absolutely sure cities are here to stay. You know, this is tough. In our lifetimes, this has probably been one of the hardest years to work through. But if you look at, it's why I wanted to share that image up front of the city over centuries. You know, cities are resilient. Manchester's a particularly resilient city, and I think we've got a region of very resilient people. Look, the more time I'm spending with people across the city. So this is a phase of adaptation, I would say. It was very interesting also to watch the results coming in with the US election over the last 10 days or so, and actually New York, which is a city that had sort of emptied out of people. Where do you come to celebrate a new president? You come back into the city. You know, so there's something around the city offers that space to convene, that space to interact, the space to collaborate. And that's, I think, how we might start to use it differently. I don't think we'll all need to sit in offices 9 to 5 in sort of ranks of desks anymore, because we've all learned that we can operate differently. So I think there will be challenges around repurposing some of our commercial areas and our commercial buildings. I think open space will matter more to people. We've realized that both the well-being benefits and the kind of physical exercise benefits of access to open space. So a better connected city, a greener city. We're doing a lot of work with City of Trees at the moment, seeing how we can match our tree planting with their tree planting, how we can clean up our river corridors. Mayfield, we're opening up the river there. We're doing a similar thing with the Northern Gateway. So much greater attention to public realm, I would say, and quality public realm. Moving us really into that space. Manchester is a European city by all standards. It has that hallmark, but making it feel like more like a European city, more outdoor spaces, opportunities to sort of dine out through the cooler months and so on. And that's something we're kind of being forced to do through response to COVID, but actually it's leaving a great legacy as well in terms of our public spaces. So I think the big things that will change probably around the workplace and how we use it. We know homes matter more than ever. So actually the design of housing, I suspect, will change a little bit as well. And then those kind of public spaces, the sort of urban living rooms, if you like, and the green spaces and the river corridors become even more important in this time.
Mm. I think that's right about the repurposing. And Phil, I just wanted to turn to you with the schemes that you've been involved with. I mean, in some senses, any kind of regeneration is really about repurposing areas, isn't it? And as a Salford resident and somebody who got married in Salford Cathedral, it's right in the heart of your Salford regeneration scheme. You can kind of see how it's always happened, hasn't it, that we regenerate and we take areas. Do you think any of that is changing in the post-COVID world, or is it really business as usual with regeneration of those areas?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. We've been repurposing as a phrase has come about predominantly because of the structural shift in the retail market and its specific impact on our towns and town and city centres. But you're absolutely right. We've been repurposing as a nation, if you like. We've been repurposing for centuries, and you know, the area that you just described, Lisa, is a perfect example of that. So, you know, Salford Cathedral, it was the absolute. I mean, many places claim it, but you really can see it was a hotbed of the Industrial Revolution around there. We know because the development across the road, Vinto Gardens, we uncovered the workers' housing, the back-to-back workers' housing, which was linked with Islington Mill, which still stands today and has been repurposed as a fantastic arts and cultural centre. So you then had, you know, fast forward, you go to the 70s, a combined period of slum clearance, so depopulation of town and city centres, coupled with the expansion of boroughs. So Salford grew, as we know, as a city, linking in Eccles, Swinton, and the response to that was to farm out the civic functions that previously were tightly knit around Salford Cathedral. So you had an acceleration then of depopulation and businesses moving out, and the response now is to repopulate. So you'll have seen along Chapel Street how quickly that has happened, not just for residents, but also businesses. And where I'm sat here, just out the window in New Bailey, which was one sea of car parking, and now is home to some of the businesses that actually tie right back into what Louise was saying around North Shoring, so Freshfields, I'll whisper that, Lisa, sorry, Freshfields are just next door to us. So yes, we've been repurposing and we will continue to repurpose. That's a dynamic city does that. I think, are we seeing any acceleration are we seeing any response post-COVID? I'd point people to a fantastic article by Norman Foster. It was in The Guardian, I think, a month ago. I can send a link if you want to share that with Louise's slides. And he did a brilliant job of pointing out that over the centuries, the cities have been subject to shocks. Generally, what you saw was that accelerated trends. It didn't create brand new ones, it accelerated trends. So we've been seeing for a while a demand in houses for roof gardens and garden space, a demand in apartments, not just for, 4 walls and a ceiling, but great communal space. I mean, and when I say communal, I mean communal space that you can occupy, not cheek by jowl, and access to the green lungs of the city. So in Salford's case, it's Peel Park and the Meadows. In Manchester's case, it's the new park that will come in Mayfield. That will accelerate. We're seeing in terms of, which goes against all of the headlines, in 2 New Bailey, which is the office building we've just finished next door, we have 3 viewings from companies looking to move into the city centre. And that's around the search for talent. So that hasn't changed, that's actually accelerated. So I think that's what we're going to see. Directly opposite where I am now, we have a planning application in for a net zero carbon office. That's a direct response. But actually what it's done is, and what's kind of underneath all those nice headlines around net zero carbon, it's about well-being. And that was already accelerating. So again, 2 New Bailey has large balconies on every floor that can be used. So acceleration of trends, not new ones, is I think what we will see, not just in workspaces, but in living and the public spaces, the urban living rooms, which I thought was a great phrase that Louise used earlier.
Yeah. And just turning to you, Graham, from that housing perspective and the design of new housing, for Trafford Housing Trust and ambitions to build a huge number of new homes over the coming years, are you seeing changes in, I suppose, what people are looking for and also what designers are creating in? I know I was looking at a planning application a couple of weeks ago, and for new residential development that was talking about apartments needing the right lighting for home working, enough sockets to make sure that people are geared up, and the right layouts for people to work at home, which did seem to me to be a COVID response. Are you seeing any of those trends coming through and what people are looking for?
Yeah, I think we are. Thank you for that, Lisa. Just starting off, you mentioned our ambition, and we have got that huge ambition. And I honestly believe it's important to keep that ambition, especially in these difficult times. We know there's a housing crisis out there. That's only been made worse over the last 6 months in the COVID world we're in at this moment in time. And that's going to take time to get better, whether there's a vaccine or not. And therefore, it's really important that ambition stays from RPs and other housing providers nationally. We've got ambitions to grow to deliver 2,000 homes per year. And we're seeing a steady growth in that. So this year we'll deliver 300 new homes across the Northwest, but by 22-23, by sites we've got already secured, we'll deliver 800 new homes in that year. So, we've got a growth trajectory which we're hitting, and we will continue to grow that in future years. But I think, like you say, what's really important is that we're able to react to the changing market there. We can't just sit on our laurels and develop what we've been looking to develop already. Just as Phil said, we're definitely seeing a huge demand increase for outdoor space, for usable communal space, as Phil said, and again for usable indoor space as well. I suppose we've got a number of our own workforce who we talk to on a regular basis, probably daily. And some of those are working from 1-bedroom flats where it's just not practical in the future. And whilst I agree with Louise that there will be that return to the office, I think there will also be a future expectation to work from home more. and therefore we've got to build that into the design of our homes. And you know, we can't create boxes. We've got to create homes that are usable, with good usable indoor space and good usable outdoor space. And I think that's really important to us as an organisation, and really important to our board. So, you know, that is something we're looking at. But on top of that as well, what we're seeing a huge demand for is technology, and good quality technology, to ensure that people can work from home, and the homes are, you know, they can be connected to everything that's relevant out there, and people can work in a fast, quick environment. Because again, you know, just like the Zoom session today, it's online, it needs to be able to work, and people need to be able to work from everywhere. And I suppose the other point bringing in to that is that, again, if you bring it back to affordability, there's something about providing affordable homes, which is fine, but we've got to make those truly affordable. And I think that comes back down to the net zero carbon argument. You know, if people are, you know, whilst you can live in an affordable home which has got you know, 80% market rent, or a social rent that might be 60% of the market or less, actually we've got to think about people's running costs, people's bills, how those homes are used. So what we're looking at constantly is how we reiterate that design to make sure they are affordable. And there's lots of ways to do that and look at that, in terms of how a home's built, how a home's used, the technology that's put in there. But I think probably maybe 6 months ago, we probably all thought we had, you know, a period of time to run at this. But I think what COVID's shown us is that change has to happen now, and that's something we're embracing as an organisation.
And is there any role for modular construction then in that? Does that help with technology? Does it hinder it? How does that fit in with delivering what people are looking for?
From my point of view, it's probably essential. Well, it is essential. It's not probably, it is essential. Again, if we are going to get to the heights of delivering 2,000 homes per year, we can't just rely on traditional build. Traditional build is going to be a big part of that. But MMC, off-site manufacture, has to be a major element of the work we're doing. And there are a number of reasons for that. Partly down to the fact that, you know, the efficiency of build, partly down to the fact that you do create sustainable homes, and, you know, they are proven to be more energy efficient and proven to be better in that stance. And what I would probably say about MNC and off-site manufacture is that there's lots of organisations that have done pilots. We've done 3 pilots. I think most organisations are on today or listening to this will say they've done a pilot. I think we've now got to move past that stage. We can no longer do a new pilot next week and a pilot the week after. I think we've got to group together, you know, RPs, private developers, and actually move it to the next stage where we're actually delivering through that mechanism. So we know we are in talks across the Northwest RPs about how we do that. But I think it's just lazy now if we say we're doing another pilot, and we've really got to change that.
Yeah. And I suppose it's modular forms of construction in residential are talked about quite often. Phil, is there any movement towards use of modular construction in commercial developments at all?
I think it's early days on that front, to be honest. I think there is a strong push on residential. I mean, we do both residential and commercial development. I think at sometimes though it's a little bit too focused on the whole solution, when actually we could make huge strides by modularizing elements of the process. So we've used bathroom pods for quite a few years. There's not that could be moved on, kitchens, etc., to push the process on, rather than it be this focus on all or nothing. So the whole thing is manufactured offsite, or you build traditional. So I suspect it will be that the two will meet in the middle. There's still difficulties on modular to get over around supply and scale, but it will get there. There's too much of a weight of public support, both political and financial, and necessity for it not to do. Commercial will then follow. There's not a huge amount actually that you can modularize in a larger office, but if you think about it, it's already happening in retail. So things like box parks and the like have been modularizing because that's a great thing to do, not because it was handed down on high that we will start having modular premises. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, but your grade A offices, I think, will take a while to catch up. There's not much you can actually do in there on a larger floor plate.
Yeah.
And Lisa,
nodding at the box parks, I was just coming back to you about placemaking and how that kind of thing can fit in, if you want to comment on that.
Thank you, Lisa. It's something we've been looking at really carefully, actually, as part of the kind of rebooting of our economy. We see huge potential around modular, particularly in housing, as Graham and Phil have said. Homes England are doing a lot as well as a national agency to drive the sector, to partner. We've got some great products as well. I think the Urban Splash House product is really good. That was developed in our city, in our region. We do need to, there's a scaling up moment now, I think, where can we see some super factories start to develop? Can different developers have a share of that factory? And it's something we would really like to pioneer in the GM region. So we see a lot around the housing potential, as Phil has said, moving to the commercial space. And then also we've been looking at it in our retrofit space, because we've got, the big zero carbon challenge is around how we bring the clean kind of homes to market, but also how we retrofit the existing stock. The existing stock is obviously the bigger culprit in terms of carbon emissions. And is there an agenda there between kind of retrofit, modular, and the move to zero carbon? And that's something we'd like to pioneer with partners too.
Mm. And just returning again then to the kind of the green spaces and the spaces in city centres. You've got a great background in placemaking, and I know that's something that you're keen on. Phil mentioned the new park in Manchester up at Mayfield. Just wondered, does Manchester have the right environment and the right spaces to be able to create the public realm that people are looking for, and what are the challenges with that?
Yes, the big answer is yes. Any city can have great public realm. I think we, as a city, have actually delivered some amazing spaces over the last, if you look back from the master plan that I mentioned in '96, that was a lot. I was a relatively young landscape architect surveyor at that time, and I came to Manchester to look at Piccadilly Gardens, to look at the space around what's now the football museum. It was Urbis back then, to look at those great parks that we brought into the city, more in the kind of Exchange Square, that they were really innovative urban landscapes of their day, and much has followed. And I think the spaces around Salford Cathedral are just gorgeous. You choose to go there. So we've got a great track record of delivery. For me, I've been talking to partners about joining up some of those dots. I think some of what's missing is the connective tissue. So the spaces that lead you from one area of the city to another. St. Peter's Square is gorgeous, but you can walk, in about 5-10 minutes, you're kind of away from that. And I think now the piece of work I'd like to do, and we've got this underway in our office, is what we're calling Manchester Connect. And looking at how we can be better connectors, both physically through those spaces, through the walk and cycling routes, and to create some really 21st century parks, which Mayfield will do. The City River Park in the northern quarter is going to be really something else as well. It is going to be transformational. And just this morning, I was having a call with Rowena Burns, who you'll probably all know, who's done a lot around innovation in health and Innovation Health Manchester. And we're looking at how we can put healthy placemaking at the heart of the transformation of the north of the city. So start with that objective, bring the partners together. And I think there's an agenda there, such a big growth agenda, to get some of that modular ambition that we've just talked about, new forms of housing delivery, great open spaces, linked to a health institution, which is the general hospital, the life sciences that spin out of that, the new businesses that will cluster around that health innovation sector. So that's the stuff I get really excited about. And I think if any city region is going to do it, it's this city region.
And I think from what you're saying, that you don't see any conflict between that and driving economic growth. I suppose there is a question as to how that all gets funded. Is it funded through development, or is it funded through public monies, obviously a mixture of both, but where does the drive come from, I guess, is the question.
Yes, I think that some of the drive will come from us. It will come from me, but it can't just be from one institution. It needs to be from that kind of collaborative network of partners. So take a geography. We all know that projects aren't delivered in isolation. It is the power of partnership working, and actually funding is generally a cocktail of funding, isn't it? It's some public, some private, some maybe you can get some innovation money, you can get some. In the past I've gone and knocked on different doors of government departments just to find, you know, you can source it from DEFRA, you can source it from MHCOG, Department for Health, and we're all having to kind of look at budgets and bringing that complementary way of working together in a different way. So I think this is a massively tough year, but it's also a year of innovation. My old boss used to say that in chaos comes creativity, and I think there's a lot in that.
Yeah, and Graham, just coming back to you on that kind of chaos and creativity and what comes out, you know, in terms of zero carbon, in terms of things being greener. How is that agenda affecting what you do at Trafford Housing Trust?
The whole, well, just starting with that chaos, and I suppose COVID's the biggest chaos. That, you know, that's had a huge impact on us as an organisation. You know, we're part of L&Q, as people know now, so we're part of a massive organisation with over 100,000 homes, which has got huge sales targets on there to hit as part of, you know, our future budgets and funding. And, you know, COVID has brought real challenges to us as an organisation. If we just think of that as a THT level, you know, we had 70 million of sales within our books this year, and through delays, through COVID, through sites being late, through the sales market completely changing, you know, we've seen that drop, and, you know, we're forecasting to maybe get about 30 million of that sales revenue through the door now. And, you know, we've got to be fleet of foot because of that, and we've got to be innovative. And again, you know, in that challenge, actually, I think, as Louise says, does bring real innovation. And we've had to really look at everything we've done or are doing this year and over the next few years to make sure that we can still strive to deliver those 2,000 homes per year. Because that ambition doesn't change, but how we deliver that ambition has to change. And, you know, we've looked at a range of initiatives, and whether that's looking at how we can move some schemes into joint ventures to de-risk them, to bring extra funding in, whether that's about renegotiating terms because we still want to deliver them, the landowners still want to sell the land. So looking at how we do that to benefit both parties, looking at how we've changed our contracts to be close to house builders rather than traditional RPs, so that we deliver homes in line with sales. And we've looked, as you've said, at the design of schemes, how we make them more energy efficient, more green, to make sure that actually once they are built, we can generate those sales at the end of the day. So, you know, whilst it's been a really tough 6 months, it's probably been my most interesting 6 months in my working life, and one of the most challenging and rewarding. And what I would probably say, and we're nowhere near the end of that, and we recognise that, but what I would say is that actually I believe our development programme now is in a better place than it was before, because we have had to put our thinking caps on. We can't just churn out what we used to churn out. We've had to adapt, and we've had to make sure we adapt to that changing market. So yes, there's still lots of risk out there. Yes, there's still lots of problems to come. But I think we're in a good place. And as an RP and other RPs, we need to rise to that challenge. And we know, as I started off in the first question, the housing crisis doesn't go away. We're still there to deliver and support it. So, you know, we've had to put our thinking caps on, but I think we're in a good place, and we will continue to change, adapt, and use innovation to make sure we stay in that right place in the future.
Yeah, I think that there's a good point there that links into a question that's come in on the Q&A, which is about what are the biggest lessons learned from, you know, the housing boom that we've had in Manchester, and then how does the city then create a balance and deliver good homes for all? I think there's lots of talk in Manchester in particular about inclusive growth and affordability. I'll come to you on this in a minute, Louise, but Graham, from your perspective, how do we deliver that and make sure that everybody is participating in that inclusive growth?
again, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? But one of the things we've always tried to do is, you know, as a development team and as a developing organisation, is produce high quality homes that people want that are affordable. And I think whether it's an open market sale home, which we do, shared ownership or rented home, and whether that's social or affordable rent, they've all got to be of the same quality. They've all got to offer the right space standards, and they've all got to be affordable. And I don't think that changes. I think if you are providing good quality homes, that, you know, like I say, no matter what tenure it is, I think you're starting from the right place. And, you know, so, and in the model that we look at, you know, we deliver 50% open market sale. We do that to generate income to support our affordable properties and to support shared ownership and affordable rent. So I think, you know, we haven't necessarily changed that ethos. We've just reviewed it, I suppose, even in more detail to make sure we get that right and we can continue delivering to that model. And it's proved successful so far. I believe it will prove successful in the future. I suppose the one major change we have made is looking more to partnerships even more. And, you know, I think Louise has already said that, you know, Manchester has got some great examples of partnerships that have delivered, and, you know, some great ones coming in the future. And, you know, that Northern Gateway, the work that's been done there or planned to be done there will be a fantastic example of that. And, you know, that just looks amazing what's planned for there. But to achieve that and to, you know, to continue to develop, I think it's about those partnerships and making sure they work together. And when you're entering a partnership, you're entering with somebody of a like mind, so that you can really generate that change.
And does that chime, Louise, with how the council want to do things? I think it's fair to say that Manchester hasn't had the best reputation in terms of delivering affordable housing, but that does seem to be changing. Have you seen that since you've been with the council?
Yes, I have, and it's a real ambition I have as well. I think it's good to remind ourselves too. I mean, 20 years ago, there was very little housing in the city centre. So going back to that, you know, a city that reinvents and evolves and responds to the market. I think we've responded in an impressive way to the housing challenge. But the right challenge is there enough affordable, and are we being inclusive enough? So it feels as though sort of phase one, if you like, was to establish that market, you know, to see the exponential sort of growth that we've seen up until very recently. The job now is to be better at how we deliver the affordable and inclusive kind of opportunities as well. So we have the Manchester Housing Providers Partnership, which you'll probably know, which is a city council partnering with the key providers across the city. Again, I've been looking at that with Kevin Lowry, who we've now confirmed as our housing director. So we all see there's more we can do with that. We've had developers come to us in the time I've been in post with affordable homes that are 100% affordable. And that's really exciting. That's the development community innovating. We can work with them on some of our land supply as well. So I think there's a lot we can do with our own portfolio of sites to really drive, you know, much higher housing numbers for the affordable sector than we're perhaps asking for through planning policy. And then the other piece of the question I just wanted to comment on is kind of lessons from COVID. And this, I think, comes back to the design of future homes, access to air, literally, you know, whether it's as a balcony or being able to step outside. Light matters enormously. We shouldn't always be relying on kind of electric or light other than natural light. So access to natural light, it's quite simple stuff. Access to fresh air, and then space to be able to do that kind of hybrid working from home. I'm sure those are lessons that will transform our housing product from this time on.
And just then coming back to you, Phil, just thinking about those, not just city centres, but there's again a question coming on the Q&A about looking at the Northwest as a whole and the future for the GM towns and people who don't necessarily want to live in the city centres. I know you've got a scheme on in Bolton at Church Wharf that is looking at providing quite a lot of residential development in Bolton, and how do we service those people who don't necessarily want to live in centres? Just wondered if you wanted to say something about that in the context of your schemes.
Yeah, absolutely. We've always worked in the GM towns and across the Northwest. So it's never been solely about Manchester, solely about Salford. So you're right. We're working with Bolton, and we're working with Warrington, with not necessarily GM, but Stockport. We're across a number of those of the places. But frankly, it's no different in many respects to the conversation we've had about Manchester and Salford. It's about delivering development that's relevant. So there's no point getting into a discussion around, well, that's what's happening in Manchester, so that's what needs to happen here, or that's what's happening in Salford, so that needs to happen here. It's about delivering what's relevant for that town and that city in some cases, which is about, coming back to your previous question about inclusive growth and providing opportunity for everybody. A few years ago, surprise, surprise, there was I think it was Harvard. There was a Harvard study that looked at the connection between prosperity and communities, and its single biggest finding was that communities that were connected did better. Well, there's a start point, isn't it? There's a start point. So let's improve the connections beyond what we've got at the moment. And again, GM is a leader in that. People might disagree at times when they stood up on the tram or whatever, but it is, if you think, where going back to Louise's example out Piccadilly Gardens, I'm Oldham born and bred. I used to jump on the number 82 down to Manchester, and frankly, in the early 80s, that wasn't a particularly pleasant experience. It is now. So, connecting people to opportunities is a key thing, so that no, they don't have to up sticks and move. So, Bolton's about providing really good quality housing in the town centre that does two things. It keeps all sections of the community. It gives them the opportunity to stay in their town, and they don't feel excluded, and they have to move to go to the opportunity. But the obviously natural spin-off to that is it improves the town centre itself. Mm. So, more of the spend stays at source. It's not spent elsewhere. And part of that then, beyond residential, is providing relevant retail. Not retail for the sake of retail. Retail isn't dead. It's about providing relevant retail. And if you think, one of the best success stories in this place pre-COVID was Altrincham. Altringham's response to the Trafford Centre wasn't to copy the Trafford Centre. Altringham's response was to provide relevant retail for its town, and it's a huge success. So that's what we're looking to do in the various GM and Northern towns that we're working in. It's not to do an identikit. Well, we see how successful the Mackie Mare is that we did in Manchester, so we want one of those. No, what you need is what's relevant to your town, which is, for example, what we've done with Warrington Council at Times Square, which is a really good new market building with a fantastic offer from 11 in the morning to 11 at night, which helps the market. So that's really where the focus will be, not just on our town, our main town and city centre, if you want to call it.
Yeah. I think that's right. Something about capturing the personalities of the individual towns, because they all do have their own personalities, don't they, and communities. That links into another question that we've had on the Q&A. I'll come to you on this, Graham, first, if I may, which is also linked to the planning white paper, which talks about lots of trying to encourage much greater engagement with local communities. And the question is really around, how do we get both the public and private sectors to engage better with communities, to really understand what their priorities are and get buy-in? Have you seen any changes to the way that you engage with local communities that's kind of helped with that, or what are the challenges with it for you, Graham?
Yeah, no, I think there are big challenges with it. Going back to the first point, it's really important that we do engage with local communities, and that's got to be the starting point of any development. And I think, just as Phil was talking about, what we've got to recognise is that each area, each community, each place we work has got a different flavour, has got a different community, and we can't assume what that community wants or that community needs. So I think the starting point is to go in with an open mind and have conversations with local people. Now, as an RP, that is something we are good at and something where we'd always start, because actually when we develop, we've always got a commitment to that area. We're not walking away from it. If we do a development, we're managing the shared ownership and we're managing the affordable rent, social rent, into our future, into our 30-year business plan. So we've got to ensure what we're developing is right in the first place, to make sure that actually that long-term commitment works for that area. So from our perspective, as I've said, it's really important to really talk to that community, really understand what they want, and to understand those needs before you start that development process. There's no point going with a closed mind to what's wanted and thinking it's 4-bedroom houses, or it's like Phil said, exactly what works in Altrincham would work in Sale Town Centre, would work in Stretford Town Centre. And what they've done in Altrincham is fantastic, and I'm now involved in working groups to look at Stretford and Sale, and we are looking at those completely differently. But it's about addressing that personality and developing what's right there. So for me, it's about talking to the community, making sure we have got the right experts to help that community as well, and making sure we're providing them with good quality information so they understand what the demand is, and building a working relationship, because that's the only way we're going to get this right. And the housing white paper does talk about that, and does talk about how we really get to the heart of the community and what they need. I don't think it's easy. And again, I was looking at the questions on the chat myself. It's really important that both RPs, private developers, local authorities are there at the start of that conversation. There's no point in bringing somebody in at the end of the conversation, because everybody's got value to add. So I think it is that listening piece. It is about providing good quality information, and it's about all the key partners being involved from the start and not halfway down the road.
Yeah, and it's finding ways to speak to the people who don't normally engage as well, isn't it? How do you reach out to the people who aren't objecting, but to garner their views? I think it is really difficult. Louise, from your perspective and from a local authority perspective, are there any innovative ways that we can do that, do you think, to try and get the people that aren't always engaged to engage with these things?
Yeah, definitely, and it's really interesting. I've sort of inherited this or found this coming into the city council, but the way in which I have a directorate around growth and development, but I work really closely with Fiona Worrell, who oversees our neighbourhoods directorate, and so actually we're organised as a city council around neighbourhoods and provision of neighbourhood services. So that has been very much the frontline operation during this time of COVID, and we've had people who've been sheltering that we've needed to get food to, or children that we've needed to support, or vulnerable elderly or young people who would have been isolated had it not been for our neighbourhood team. So our neighbourhood officers have been going literally door to door, and we know the geography really well. So I think there's a big responsibility actually with the city council to provide that kind of, it's a personal relationship really, isn't it, in terms of communities. And you're right, the hard to reach people probably aren't going to be picking up the phone to a developer. There's going to be just sort of a natural challenge with that, I would say. So I think there's a lot we can do through being the kind of face of the city, literally at this time, delivering food parcels, looking out for the vulnerable. We're building different relationships. Our community centres, I think it links back to that earlier point about kind of neighbourhood centres and town centres. The smallest scale, I guess, of urbanism is the neighbourhood centre, isn't it? And actually we are looking at those as well, and how do we need to repurpose those? Some of those have failing shops. So what might we use those? If it's no longer a kind of place for retail, might that become kind of neighbourhood health centre or nursery space or something that can be that smaller scale kind of civic neighbourhood heart, I guess. So I think there's it goes back to the points we've all made around partnership. No one party can do it all, but I think there is something I've certainly seen within Manchester around how we organise around neighbourhoods, and that comes back down to tenant services. You know, how we, if an issue kicks off locally, it impacts on that area, and we're often the first to kind of called out or made aware of it. So there's it's not an answer to your question, but I think it's a kind of it's opening up, in my mind, different ways in which we can work very directly and very locally.
Phil, you were nodding there. Do you have any magic ways of engaging? There's a question on the Q&A about, you know, is there a challenge around trust between developers and local communities? Clearly there is, but you know, how do you overcome that?
I think there is, and I think, you know, if I'm being pessimistic or realistic, I think to an extent there always will be, because of the nature of it's such a certainly town and city centre development, it's such a complex thing. It's very difficult to get across the complexities of it, and without wishing to sound old in this age of, you know, social media, it's all about snapshots, and you cannot, you know, and even a certain 4-episode series that was aired, you know, had no way of capturing some of those complexities. I think absolutely the point made about the silent majority. How do we get to those and get their opinions? Because it has been ever thus that there's a conversation with those who know how to converse with you. It's getting to those that's more difficult. What we found, and I think one of the best examples I've ever been involved in was in Salford, was we set up a regeneration forum it met quarterly, and unashamedly it was invited, so it wasn't just a rock up, but that helped stop some of the complaints about the size of a bin and what have you, and really got to the heart of some of the really, you know, fundamental points of the regen. Size of the bins can follow, it's what the community really wants. But it was represented by tenant groups, the churches and faith groups, schools, universities, and there was a real mistrust at the beginning, and I really think by the end, and it came to a natural end because we were told just to get on and do it at the end, which was about the best compliment I think we've ever had. But over time, that trust got built up. So I think it's a slow, for big schemes, it's a slow, let's get things right, let's help to give alternative views. So not just we stand up there, but bring other people to speak and take on the views of the community. I think there's a danger, though, that we need to be a little bit careful that in being innovative in engaging communities, we don't go too far. And I've seen some examples recently where it feels like consultation has been commercialized. So it's almost like the pre-sale of a scheme rather than a true consultation of taking on opinion. So that's great in the sense it might get people to turn up, but is it really getting to the community, which are the ones who won't necessarily be the ones that buy, but the ones who need to be heard, because they're the ones who are going to be sat alongside it for a long time. So I think we just need to be a little bit measured that we don't go too far. And actually, I'd say it becomes a commercialization of what should be a very trusting, and not always at the beginning, but trusting relationship where views are heard. And frankly, the best ones are where you have the confidence to say, I hear what you say, but no, because of these reasons. At the same time as you can say, I hear what you say, and yes, because of these reasons. And I think people respect that far more than, I'll take that away and never hear from you again. Yeah. So there are a few things in there, but I don't have a magic wand, Lisa, no.
Okay, well, we've got a couple of minutes left just to finish. So I'll just ask a final question of all of you, if I may, about, you know, what's the one thing that will help us in terms of coming out of COVID? Graham, I'll come to you first, and then you, Phil, and then Louise, I'll let you have the last word, if that's okay.
I feel boring because I'm going to say partnerships again. I honestly believe that it is the way forward. We've got different expertises, we've got different balance sheets, we've got different levels of knowledge. And if we put all that together and work together in the true form of partnership, where we are aiming to achieve the end goal, that's what will help us drive us out of this and continue to develop and meet that housing need.
Thanks, Graham. Phil?
I'm going to give you 2 words, but it's one thing, patience and ambition. So be patient, because this will come good. but be ambitious and invest now and innovate now, because we will set ourselves up to be ahead of the pack. And this is, this is a broad competition in the country. So as a region, we'll be ahead of the pack, and all the health innovation and the exciting technological work that Louise mentioned, that we're working with Salford University on Salford Crescent and the innovation district around there. Hold our nerve, be patient and be ambitious.
Thanks, Phil. Louise?
Well, I was going to go for 3 words. I've got 3 C's. I had a bit more time, you see, to scribble things down. I've got communicate. So today's a great example of that. Keep talking. That's how you get through. Connect. Keep connecting and innovating. And then my final C is create. So be creative and be innovative.
That's great. That's certainly all given me a lot of heart that we will definitely come out stronger. Thank you all. I'll hand back to Simon, if I may.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa. Yeah, thank you to everybody. I mean, it's just doing a brief summary on that. Firstly, the thank yous. Thank you to Louise. Thank you for your keynote. Very informative. Looking forward to the release of that properly on Wednesday. I think Sir Richard might have a little bit more time than 5 minutes, but thank you very much for that. And obviously, thank you for being on the panel. Thank you to Graham, to Phil, and obviously to our fabulous chair this morning, Lisa. I think that combined really well. It's very informative. Trying to summarise so many different topics and so many valid points is quite a tricky one, but here goes. I think the general sort of theme coming out from everybody is fleet of foot is absolutely critical. I know that people have had to make changes to plans this year, and obviously seeing how those plans come about is obviously going to be absolutely critical. But having that fleet of foot is obviously, as I mentioned, critical. There are lots of projects. I know Louise said during lockdown, the construction market has probably at the same level as pre-COVID, and I think that's really encouraging. But it's not just a case of that being fulfilling historic jobs. It's not just a case of that. And listening to you guys today, it's obviously you're still ambitious. The targets are still there, and I know Lisa said it's reassuring to hear what everyone's had to say, but also as important as with the current levels of construction is looking forward, and what's in the pipeline and what's coming out is absolutely very, very reassuring for the marketplace. And as a number of you mentioned, COVID has accelerated change, but it's from what I can see, it's good change. Not everything coming out of COVID is as bad as not. There are some green shoots, collaboration, partnerships were common themes, well-being, outdoor space, even indoor space as well. Building back better, MMC, community engagement again was a reoccurring theme, and I think that's absolutely critical when you're looking to the future with such ambitious targets to actually make sure that the local community, as we everyone agreed with, is absolutely on the money, so to speak. But looking at the bigger picture, whilst obviously looking at the ground level is critical. I think Phil finished off with patience and ambition being a sort of a combination. I'd written down bigger picture on the ground level. And I think that's kind of the same point, isn't it, of a different hat on. But the quote I really like was in chaos comes creativity, and I think the Northwest is pretty good at doing that. So I know I'm slightly biased on that one, but just like to say a thank you to everybody for your time today, and thank you for delivering such a wonderful panel session. A special thank you to our sponsors again today, Shoesmiths and to Lisa and the team. That's very much appreciated. This session will be available on YouTube. Movers and Shakers has a YouTube channel. Please feel free to subscribe to that. All the historic content's on there. This should be live within 7 days or so. So if there's anybody in your team or friendship or circle, please feel free to forward this session or indeed a historic one as and when you see relevant. I think that's as much as I can do today, but thank you once again for joining us. I hope you found it of value. So from everyone from Movers and Shakers, have a great Thursday and Friday and have a wonderful weekend. No doubt we shall see you soon. Stay safe. Thanks. Cheers. Bye-bye.